considered a lender, right? You're not a donor, you're not a savior, you're a lender, and you're actively investing in these other women. So often, you're given this chance to kind of see like which potential lendees kind of match your priority giving areas, priority lending areas, and you can invest at any level, right? Like you can invest $25, you can invest $250, and this little micro loan goes out, and often it's usually for the big categories I saw were women who were going for education, right? Like and it's usually administrative education so that they can gain an entry level job in sort of the quote unquote white collar world. Farm equipment, and often it's, they've profiled women, wives, and mothers who are trying to raise money for farm equipment for their husbands and sons in order to cultivate and make money off their land. And then also these little bodegas. Are where women are raising money. And it's a really amazing opportunity to personally micro invest. And that feels like something that's meaningful because not all of us have access to doing work on the UN Commission on the Status of Women, which I was really impressed with.
Yeah, no, it's amazing. They have done and are continue to do amazing work. And, we spoke with a college student who is working with the Clinton Global Foundation with a, small project on women and girls, helping to provide education and menstrual products to women in kind of rural India. And those projects are also amazingly helpful and useful, and they're still micro projects. And she was able to create, she created it on her own campus, and then so many people were interested that they started creating similar projects on other campuses throughout the world, actually in England, where they also are dealing with this issue of taxation of menstrual products and other European countries. And so it was actually really heartening to see that not only was there just this college student who was really interested in this, who was helping provide this kind of support and this infrastructure for it, but that she was also getting support from organizations like the Clinton Global Initiative.
Yeah. Have you seen yet Period, End of Sentence?
I have not. And if any of our listeners have not yet seen it, they should immediately look at it. First of all, who is it that went to our college who worked on it?
Yes, I know there's a more recent alumna who.
Yeah, there's a recent alumna who was, executive producer or something on the film, which is amazing. Women's colleges are amazing. But second of all, it deals with this issue. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and micro projects. So that was one of the things that really that when I was kind of reading on the status of women, that microfinance has fulfilled its promise, and I'm so pleased to see it flourish. And as women have gained more economic stability and empowerment, they are making more and more gains globally in the policy sphere. Right? I mean, it's a very basic principle of oppression. If you're sitting around all day, well, not sitting around, but if you're working very hard all day, and while you are consistently working hard to feed your family, you're also terrified that you're about to be, in a violent situation, what does that do to you? What happens to you? And so economic stability has led to this policy stability, and hopefully is laying, and I think there's a case that it's laying the groundwork for massive changes for women.
One can only hope that is the case.
I know. I'm so jaded and cynical.
I know. But speaking of periods, I want to talk a little bit about the bill that I just today got an email about, but I've seen it over the last couple of weeks, that's being proposed about menstrual products. Do you know anything about this?
I have read like a summary on it. Right? Is this there's a good one and a bad one.
Yes.
Is this the good one? I thought it was a bad one.
Yeah, that's a great question. So there's a couple of states that are proposing tax exemption bills on menstrual products, which, let's be honest, menstrual products are not like a luxury item. They're not something that, like, it just because half of the population uses them and the other half of the population doesn't mean that it's a luxury that we get periods. And it's misogynistic to believe that like women should have to pay for this because it's Eve's curse. We don't actually live in a church state, and
Are you sure about that?
well, no, I'm not sure. I'm not actually sure about that at all.
It's a quasi church
Yeah.
run state.
But I did see something today. Congresswoman Grace Meng, has introduced the Menstrual Equity for All Act of 2019, and it's the first comprehensive bill of its kind that would, among its provisions, ensure free menstrual hygiene products are available for students, low-income individuals, homeless individuals, and people who are incarcerated, those working for large employers, and in all federal public buildings. So, like, the machines that they have on the wall in public buildings, they would be free. And people who are in prison would get free. I mean, because that's apparently, I've never been in prison. This is my privilege talking, but I did not know until I watched Orange is the New Black, which is so like white woman of me. Like, it's so white woman of me. That was an issue for incarcerated women.
Right. No, I think I can get behind that bill. And, my next question is, does EBT should obviously cover, hygiene products, right?
Yeah. Or if you're paying for hygiene products with an EBT, then it automatically, like, you don't actually have to pay for it, right? I mean, if you're receiving government assistance, there's no reason why you should be paying for hygiene products, feminine hygiene, or I guess menstrual hygiene products. Let's call it that.
Right. I can get behind that. And just access, it kind of, you can expand it out too to access and birth control in general, right? That's a sticky, thorny subject, right? Because then we're kind of saying, hey, what's the line between saying, hey, women who are experiencing poverty, you shouldn't have kids, or, like, here's free birth control, versus women who aren't experiencing poverty, can breed away. That to me is sticky, but to me, it kind of also boils down to, no matter what your income level is, you should have the absolute control over your reproduction.
Agreed. I absolutely agree with you. And maybe it comes down to, if you have the ability to pay for it, maybe you pay for it and help support the costs of people who don't have the ability to pay for it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, then it becomes almost, again, like this kind of micro loan that you are donating so that other people can have the same privileges that you have.
Right, which circles back to that whole, why don't we see other women as allies in the struggle, right? Instead of like looking down at them and being like, well, she couldn't afford it, she shouldn't have had babies. Like, there's this vindictiveness that women with more privilege exercise on those that they see as sort of making bad choices, instead of understanding all of us living under this system of oppression that is designed to create bad choices for women.
I absolutely agree with you. I mean, and if we look at, where was it recently that they just changed their abortion law to make it like the most restrictive abortion law in the United States? I want to say it was like Alabama or Arkansas.
I think it was Alabama. I just saw one in Tennessee that was like a 2-week bill.
Stop.
No,
you don't even know that you're pregnant in 2 weeks.
Right. No, but like, so for instance, you could see some of these menstrual equality bills and, like the mandated vasectomy bills or whatever. I love it because it's basically doing this hazing that the anti-choice movement has been doing to us for so long. Right. It's like, not even ridiculousness, because I don't think it's ridiculous, but some people would. But like, what sort of way out there policies can the pro-choice movement throw up that just uses other people's, it uses the opposition's time and energy so that they don't have time to get traction.
Yeah.
Right. So I think that's what a lot of these bills are. I mean, back in the day when we had some kind of balance on the Supreme Court, it wouldn't have been as terrifying, right? Because we would have been like, well, that is a clear intrusion on Roe. All of this stuff that's happening now in the states, right, that are so restrictive, it's not a coincidence that it's happening now. Like, they've been floating these bills, but they haven't gotten anywhere because everyone knows that, like, it would get up to any kind of Roe test would defeat these bills, but they know that is not the case anymore, right?
Well, and then the other thing is, if Roe got overturned, then it goes back to the states to make the decision about what their law is going to be. And so they're quickly passing these laws, very strict laws or really open laws, depending on the state, so that there is a law on the books if Roe gets overturned. And so,
Right. I mean, I would see like of all of these ridiculous cases, I mean, the Alabama one, what was that, 6 weeks?
I think that's
Right?
right.
6 weeks could be a good row test, but the 2 weeks is just ridiculous, right? Like 6 weeks is obviously placing an undue burden. And, that's what, and it's kind of curious because you have to drill down on what does it mean to overturn Roe, right? They're not going to like rehear the case. So what's going to happen is one of these cases is going to float its way up through the district courts and the circuit courts, and it's going to get up there, and that's the question, right? That's going to be debated: is does a 6-week bill place an undue burden on a woman's right to choose? Mm-hmm. Help me remember the TRAP bill that was struck down. Was Kavanaugh on the court when they struck down the Texas TRAP bill?
I am not certain. Let me look.
Right. So that was kind of encouraging, right, to choice folks, because the TRAP laws, which basically are this kind of grouping of restrictive laws on abortion clinics, right? Like the hallways have to be X amount wide, the doorways have to be X amount wide, the providers have to have admitting privileges at a local hospital, right? It's this package of laws that are placed, again, an undue burden on the abortion providers. But anyway, everyone was really worried because that floated all the way up to the Supreme Court after Trump was elected, and they struck it down.
Yeah, so it was 2016 is when the Supreme Court ruled against the Texas TRAP law, but there are other laws that are starting to come up. And
right, so the question is, in a Kavanaugh court, will we be able to protect Roe?
Sure. And if you look at, NARAL, prochoiceamerica.org, has a great map that shows where there are TRAP laws, and basically every state except for Montana, which is surprising. Oregon, Colorado, West Virginia, also surprising. Vermont and New Hampshire have laws like this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's the erosion of Roe. It's the erosion of reproductive rights, right? It's never going to be one big sweeping, although it could be one big sweeping decision.
Which is also a little terrifying.
Yeah. The crazy news is, like, we kind of have Roberts now, right? Like,
yeah, I think it was surprising to a lot of people that he is, I think personally he is fairly conservative, but I think judicially he seems to be, at least, relatively siding with the wanting to provide ways that the Supreme Court can help support lawmakers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think my reading, and everyone, it's kind of like reading through a piece of wax paper when it comes to the court. But, what's coming down is a lot of people are saying that he is most interested in preserving judicial autonomy.
Yeah, agreed. Which, that's good. I support that. I can get behind that.
Yeah.
So before we, finish out today, is there any one specific thing that you would want our listeners to, like, aside from microlending and how that helps support, like, global women globally, and going and watching Period, which is an amazing film, and writing your congressperson and letting them know that they should be supporting the Menstrual Product Equality Act that is being proposed. What should people be doing right now to resist the patriarchy?
Well, I have to say, it was informative and encouraging and discouraging as well. But I really enjoyed reading the annual report from the UN Commission on the Status of Women. It covered policy, it covered finance, and it covered violence against women. And it was empowering to see the policy gains, right? Like the blue wave that came through the United States is being replicated on a global level. And that is something that is an enormously hopeful thing to see, right? Through the quote unquote developing world, all the way up through, the white Western world, women are making policy gains. And of course, there's always backslide, right? There's always places where that's not going to happen. And of course, we understand that those are the places that are most destabilized, right? So reading about the Muslim Rohingya women, right? They are not